Sylvia, many residents here in Appin and the surrounding suburbs were shaken awake by this earthquake early this morning. It hit at 1:13 a.m. and measured 3.9 on the Richter scale. Now, some locals have said that at first they thought that a car or a truck had hit their home. They heard a loud rumbling, which was then followed by shaking windows and floors and verandas. Geoscience Australia says this quake could have been felt up to 56 kilometres away, and that so far they've had more than 100 reports of rumbling.
Parts of the South are getting hit with more rain after severe storms took the lives of 4 people in Alabama. Authorities say a tree fell on their mobile home in southeast Alabama Monday evening, the apparent result of a tornado. Authorities say 7 people were inside the home at the time.
You know, there's a lot of people that will be affected by this, and of course there's a lot of compassion there. Have great responders throughout this community that have spent a lot of time here.
The twister damaged parts of Houston County in Alabama, about 7 miles north of the Florida Panhandle. The line of severe thunderstorms in the deep south produced several possible tornadoes, and residents in southern Alabama, southwest Georgia, and the Florida Panhandle continued to face that threat early Tuesday.
More now on our breaking news. You can see there on the screen an earthquake with a magnitude of 7.2 has struck southwest of Fiji. The US Geological Survey says the epicenter was 284 kilometres off the coast of Fiji and hit at 9:52 p.m. local time.
Now, a local tsunami warning has been issued. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Centre saying any threat from the waves will be isolated to Fiji's coastline. Any waves are likely to be small. Now, Geoscience Australia also estimates that the shaking or the tremors might have been felt in surrounding islands, including Tonga, Vanuatu and New Caledonia.
On Wednesday, at a meeting of the American Astronomical Society in Grapevine, Texas, an international team of scientists announced that for the first time they've been able to trace a repeating radio signal to a specific distant galaxy. Sriharsh Tendulkar of McGill University and a member of the Discovery team said, "We know that at least one of these fast radio bursts originated in a discrete source within a distant dwarf galaxy located some 3 billion light-years beyond our Milky Way galaxy." And, according to team leader Shami Chatterjee, finding the host galaxy of this FRB in its distance is a big step forward, but we still have much more to do before we fully understand what these things are.
The Chinese are starting their new year choking on smog. Despite Beijing's claims of making efforts to reduce air pollution, heavy smog alerts have been issued for the northern parts of that country. Now, the air was so toxic in some areas that even its residents took off to spend their New Year's elsewhere, far from home. Lee Ji-won has the full story.
With the smog in the northern parts of China getting worse by the day, a smog alert has been issued in over 60 cities, and a huge number of residents spent their New Year's away from the area. According to China's Environmental Protection Ministry, red alerts have been issued for 24 cities. That's the highest level in China's 4-tier pollution warning system, and at that level, factories, schools, and construction sites are closed.
Another forceful response today from the controversial head of WikiLeaks, who says the Obama administration is connecting dots where there aren't any. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge reports tonight on a new round of finger-pointing in the hacks of political figures around the election being blamed on the Russian government.
In an exclusive interview, the head of WikiLeaks told Fox's Sean Hannity that the Russian government was not his source for the DNC and Clinton campaign emails.
Can you tell the American people 1,000% you did not get it from Russia or anybody associated with Russia?
We can say, we have said repeatedly over the last 2 months that our source is not the Russian government and it is not a state party.
Assange, who sought refuge in London's Ecuadorian embassy 4 years ago to avoid extradition on sexual assault allegations, said President Obama is not being straight with the American people.
He's acting like a lawyer. If you look at most of his statements, he doesn't say that. He doesn't say WikiLeaks obtained its information from Russia, worked with Russia.
on this recent analysis released by the Bureau of Homeland Security, or DHS, blaming the Russian civilian and military intelligence services. Assange said the public evidence is weak.
What was missing from all of those statements? The word WikiLeaks. It's very strange.
Trump's prospects for peace in the Middle East. Can he do what no president has done in the last 50 years and bring about an end to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and a two-state solution? He certainly said he'd like to try. He's even called it, quote, the ultimate deal, suggesting his Jewish son-in-law, Jared Kushner, might be the one to do it. President Barack Obama tried. There were negotiations the Obama administration led in 2010 by then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and then again 4 years later under Secretary of State John Kerry. Both rounds of negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians fell apart, with finger-pointing and both sides blaming each other. Can Trump do any better? Well, he's said that a UN Security Council resolution passed a month before his term condemning settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem would make it harder to negotiate peace, but he said he'll get it done anyway. He's made promises. He's promised to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Though Israelis have lauded and praised that decision or that promise, Palestinians have condemned it, calling it the death of a two-state solution. Will Trump fare any better than his predecessors? Well, he certainly brings an outsider's perspective to the conflict, that of a businessman, not a politician. But those presidents who have dealt with the conflict have done so with a very delicate touch, something Trump isn't known for.
A federal judge has dropped charges against a man accused of threatening to exterminate gay people on Facebook. District Judge Williams Locke dismissed the case against Craig Jungwirth, who was indicted by a grand jury and could have faced a sentence of 10 to 16 months in prison. But prosecutors requested that the charges be dropped over a month after announcing in court that the evidence against Jungwirth appeared to be weak. The case was partially based on a screenshot of Jungwirth's Facebook post. But prosecutor Mark Anton told a judge that the evidence was purely circumstantial since investigators were unable to definitively link the threat to him, even though the FBI was reportedly able to show that several of these threats were posted from his mother's computer.
The president-elect taking another victory lap after calling out Ford for a plan to build a $1.6 billion plant in Mexico yesterday. Company called Trump to tell them they are scrapping the plan, adding hundreds of jobs in the U.S. Our business correspondent Rebecca Jarvis spoke to Ford's CEO about the decision. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning, George. And as you say, that plant in Mexico was a focus of Donald Trump's criticism on the campaign trail. Now Ford says it is scrapping those plans, instead moving production of the new Ford Focus to a pre-existing plant in Mexico. And rather than adding 2,800 jobs in Mexico, the company will create 700 jobs here in the U.S. for new electric and self-driving cars. I asked Ford CEO Mark Fields what role the president-elect played in that decision.
Did you feel any pressure from President-elect Donald Trump to make this decision?
We look at a lot of different factors, and one of the factors that we're looking at is our view is that there's going to be a more positive business environment for U.S. manufacturing under President-elect Trump. His pro-growth policies that he's been talking about, we think could be very beneficial. And this is a vote of confidence that we feel he can deliver on those things.
And ahead of the announcement, Fields tells me he shared the news in a phone call with both President-elect Donald Trump and Vice President-elect Mike Pence. Fields tells me it was a positive conversation.
The Brits are warning their citizens of a possible chemical attack from ISIS. They're asking the public, come forward, please, with any information that you might have. Nigel Farage is with us. Nigel, we usually talk to you about Brexit and immigration, all the rest of it, but this time, a chemical attack in Britain? This sounds really serious, because the warning came from a senior official.
It did. It came from a government minister. What was interesting was about 4 years ago, I said that I felt we had a fifth column inside this country, people who've come here or even been born here and got British passports and yet are the enemy within. And that's exactly what this minister was saying, that we do have this presence within our country. We have to be vigilant. People have to come forward. And that particularly applies to people in the Muslim communities here in Britain. You know, if they hear or see of things that are dangerous or are going wrong, they need, in the interest of all of us, to tell the authorities. Now, to talk about the prospect of a dirty bomb has frightened some people, but goodness me, you know, we are up against an enemy here who have no moral boundaries whatsoever.
It's extraordinary stuff. I want to bring to your attention, I know you know this already, but let me tell our viewers also. Angela Merkel, Germany's chancellor, says that the biggest threat to Europe is Islamic terror. And at the same time, we understand that mass deportations of migrants are going to start at the end of this year from Italy. Nigel, I put it to you that Europe is now saying no more, and some of those who are here now have to leave.
Make no mistake about it. We're going to keep our promise to the American people, and we're going to repeal Obamacare and replace it with solutions that lower the cost of health insurance without growing the size of government. Now, there's a broad range of ideas about how we do this, and Republicans have been offering those ideas again and again, literally every year since Obamacare was first signed into law. We're going to be working with Dr. Price, both before and after his confirmation when he steps into the role at HHS, working with the Republican leadership in the House and the Senate to bring forward those solutions and to take the case for those solutions to the American people.
According to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, a record number of endangered Florida panthers died again in 2016. The report claims that 42 of the big cats in the state were killed, matching the 2015 record. The commission added in a statement that only 6 new litters, with a total of 14 cubs, were born in 2016. The state also estimates that only 100 to 180 Florida panthers remain in the wild. According to critics, government officials have failed to implement coherent efforts to save the panthers.
An Algerian terror suspect linked to Osama bin Laden has won a 21-year legal battle to live in the UK. It's the latest blow to the efforts of the Home Office to expel alleged foreign jihadists. The suspect is only referred to by the letter G. He's an Algerian national who applied for asylum in the UK in 1995 using a fake French passport. He's accused of supporting the Salafist group for Call and Combat, which has ties to Osama bin Laden. The Home Office also claims he's helped send young British Muslims to terror training camps abroad. RT's Polly Boyker has more.
The government had been trying to get this man known as G deported back to Algeria. They'd refused to grant him residency here in the UK, and he'd lost appeals to stay in the country twice. But now a judge has said that G no longer poses a threat to national security here in the UK, and that limiting his right to live in the UK has affected his mental health. And this isn't a unique case. Just a few weeks ago here, there was a similar story. B claimed asylum back in 1993 and over the years was deemed a threat to national security not once but twice. And yet still his lawyers were able to use the European Convention on Human Rights to argue that he would be tortured if he went back to his homeland of Algeria. And in December, the same court that granted asylum to G, the Special Immigration Appeals Court, rejected the Home Office's attempt to deport him.
Tonight, President-elect Trump escalating his ongoing battle with the U.S. intelligence community, tweeting just days before the high-profile briefing, the, quote, intelligence briefing on so-called, quote, Russian hacking was delayed until Friday. Perhaps more time needed to build a case. Very strange. Intelligence officials are pushing back, denying there was ever a delay in the briefing and that it was always scheduled for Friday. Trump also siding with WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, a man wanted by the U.S. for leaking classified information, who in an interview with Fox News denied Russia had anything to do with handing over the stolen documents from the DNC and Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta.
We have said repeatedly over the last 2 months that our source is not the Russian government and it is not a state party.
Trump tweeting, Julian Assange said a, quote, 14-year-old could have hacked Podesta. Why was DNC so careless? Also said Russians did not give him the info. On Capitol Hill today, Vice President-elect Mike Pence defended Trump's skepticism.
The President-elect has expressed his very sincere and healthy American skepticism.
Well, Donald Trump is insisting North Korea will not develop a nuclear weapon capable of reaching the United States. Trump tweeted, "It won't happen."
but he didn't clarify exactly what he meant. The post comes after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said his country is in final stages of preparations for the launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile, hinting that a test was imminent.
And the 115th Congress will be sworn in today. It's the most powerful Republican-led Congress in 2 decades. Here's a live look at the Capitol building in Washington, where it'll all happen. Republicans are vowing to unravel 8 years of President Obama's Democratic agenda, starting with repealing and replacing his signature health care law. With a hefty majority in the House and a slight advantage in the Senate, the GOP is also looking to target the tax code, regulation, and rules on the environment.
But their first agenda is to pay the light bill.
They're going to do it, as we hope. And a little bit of darkness in the shot there. But with no advance notice, the House Republicans have voted to gut the Office of Congressional Ethics, sparking outrage from Democrats and watchdog groups. The Independent Ethics Office was created to investigate allegations of misconduct by lawmakers, but it would now fall under the House Ethics Committee, which is run by lawmakers. The full House is expected to vote on that change today. We're going to start this morning, and a good Wednesday morning to you all, with President-elect Donald Trump clashing with the intelligence community before getting briefed on those Russian hacking allegations.
Trump fired off a skeptical tweet claiming the briefing had been delayed, but intelligence sources say that's not the case. And WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is also weighing in, insisting the hacked emails that embarrassed Democrats before the election did not come from Russia. ABC's Janae Norman is following the overnight developments from Washington, D.C. Good morning, Janae.
Candace and Diane, good morning. So that briefing centers on allegations Russians hacked the DNC with intentions to influence the election. Allegations President-elect Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange continued to deny.
The president-elect throwing shade on the U.S. intelligence community, tweeting, "The intelligence briefing on so-called Russian hacking was delayed until Friday. Perhaps more time needed to build a case. Very strange." But intelligence officials say that briefing was always scheduled for Friday. It's the latest in the election hacking scandal that found the president-elect aligned with a fugitive computer activist. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange telling Fox News' Sean Hannity Russia was not the source of stolen DNC emails.
We can say, we have said repeatedly over the last 2 months that our source is not the Russian government. And it is not a state party.
NASA has some big plans for 2017, and it could very well be the biggest year for the organisation in some time. According to recent news, NASA could be forging an increased partnership with private space programs and individuals with lots of money to bolster its most important goals, such as sending a manned flight to Mars by 2030. It may sound like a lofty goal, and it is, but it's time for NASA and the private sector to work in that kind of capacity. This would mean an extremely important stride forward as a whole if NASA decides to proceed.